Today was my birthday, and I decided the night before that I would go into work. That I was going to, even though there is shelter in place orders and most businesses are still closed, the position that I have is deemed essential enough for me. And I've been going to work, and so I decided that even though it was my birthday and I could have taken it off, I was still going to go to work, and I did. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on in the episode. But for right now, I want to start by telling you about this thing that we had, a little problem we used to have when I was a lot younger and we used to operate the truck. So every morning, exactly every morning around 4:30 in the morning, my father would get up to start the prep for getting the truck going. And one of the essential things that he needed to do was go to inside the truck, and all the way to the back was this flat grill that we used to call the comal. Actually, it was el comal. We used to call it el comal because it was sort of the king. Now, next to the comal, there was a steam table, and on the other side of that, there was a fryer that required the same process to be turned on. But the comal needed to be turned on first because it was the king, and everything where all the magic happened was this comal. In other words, this is where we would grill all that carne asada and collect all the succulent juices, all the drippings, the seasonings. And after it would cook, we would put it in this pan along with the juices. And that's what we used to make tacos de carne asada. And once that was off, we would use the same comal. So we cleaned it and put some grilled onions there, let them grill, and then throw the pork that was eventually going to be the al pastor, and let that marinate, let the caramelized onions collect some of that juice of the carnitas, the pork, and then eventually when you poured the red sauce to make the al pastor, all that would just sit there for 10, 20 minutes finishing cooking, and again you would collect all these juices and the meat and put it in a pan, and that's what we would make the al pastor tacos. And the same thing was for the chicken, so this grill, this comal was our king. We would throw in on top of that grill just so many tortillas to warm up at the same time so that we could make the tacos that people were just craving and dying for. And we needed to make a lot of them at times because people loved them. So the comal was such an important part of the truck. That truck had so many parts, but the comal was the king. But the comal wouldn't start, obviously, if you didn't turn on the burners on the bottom, right? Like any stove, anything that you have to warm up, you have to turn on the stove, the burners. And the burners obviously sat below the comal, this thick metal, and there were some sliding doors, little sliding doors. There weren't doors, but they were sliding to, you would open that up and turn on the burners and then close it up. And then you could regulate the heat. You would turn it up all the way to 500 degrees. And it was awesome. But there was this thing. Every day there was a struggle. And I laugh now because it was a struggle to turn on the pilot light. The pilot light was a struggle to turn on because at that time, and I'm sure there's still some challenges, but at that time you would have to hold whatever you were using to light it, a match, sometimes a paper towel to light a fire, and then put your hand in there close to the pilot and then press this little button multiple times, I guess, to like a clicker to let the propane come out of it to light up the pilot. And once you had the pilot lit, of course, then you could turn on the burners, and the whole ring of burners would turn on. There were 4 sets of burners, so you had to turn on 4 pilots. And it seemed like if you turned on one pilot, then the other pilot would go on faster. But there was always a struggle. Every morning, there was a struggle to turn on this pilot, because you would have to hold the fire and then press the button almost simultaneously. And there were times you would press it, and you could hear click, 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 and the fire would be firing. It would be, you'd be holding a paper towel or a match, and it'd be, if it wasn't lighting, then it was getting close to your finger, and eventually it would just get to your finger, and you would have to drop it and then you wouldn't turn on the pilot, and you would have to repeat this again. And there were times that we would get frustrated, and I know my dad would get frustrated. Like, there were a lot of cuss words that would be said in Spanish mainly, that when the light didn't turn on, so you knew what kind of morning or day you were going to have based on how you could turn on that pilot. And once you turned on the pilot, you knew that you were going to have a good day, because the king, the comal, would take over and help us have a great day, right? Sell that freaking food, the tacos, the burritos, the tortas, enchiladas, everything that we needed to do to make a living. We knew that once we turned on that pilot, it was it. And as frustrating as it would have been, once that thing stayed on for at least 3-4 seconds, you knew the rest was probably going to be good. And so you would have to struggle initially, oftentimes. And we would. Mostly my dad, because he was the first to turn it on. So he was almost always the first to turn it on. And then eventually, as we got older, we would turn it on. And if he needed a day off, then, we would have to be doing, or if they were down in Mexico, we would have to take over the business, and my brothers would, my sister, we would all do it. And we got good at it. Several days ago, my father's pilot light went off forever. And if the king, the comal, was the king of the truck, then my dad was the comal of our family, And we lost him. We couldn't do anything to turn that pilot on. We needed to. Except that his soul had left. And as you can imagine, we are grieving. We're together as a family, beautifully. My mother is if we were the Catholic Church and my dad was the God, then my mom is the Pope. She's the closest person to him, because she spent 53 years of her life, of their lives together. So we are coming together to support her. We're all dealing with it the way you would deal with. And I needed to come back on. And I know I've been away for a little bit. We've been dealing with a lot of what we knew was coming. And when it came, there's never anything you could do to prepare. It's the pain. If you're unfortunate enough to have lost a loved one who who was as close to you as our father was to us, and you know what the pain feels like. It's indescribable. And if you haven't lost somebody significant or a pet that's significant, and we know it's gonna come, and we all deal with it in our own ways. And so when I woke up the morning of my birthday, I thought about how in previous times, and we are under so many unprecedented times right now that none of us have ever been in a pandemic, where we have to stay home to separate ourselves, social beings, physical distancing, all that stuff, wearing a surgical mask, and gloves. Been difficult to process, but I decided I was going to go to work because traditionally I would have taken it off, and some people have the fortune of taking a day off paid if it's their birthday. It's their day. But I thought I would go to work to help the process, and I quickly thought that, of all the years that my mom and my dad went and sold tacos, burritos during the day and at night, hardly anybody knew it was their birthday when they would be working, because they just worked. They just worked. And if it was my dad's birthday, he worked, and hardly anybody would know it was his birthday, and he would just treat it like any other day. And we knew in the family that it was his birthday. So I decided to go to work and do what my dad would have done. And it felt good. For the moment, I was able to concentrate on some things, and I still have my moments. Some of the people at work found out that my father had passed and expressed their deep condolences and everything. And it's been the amount of support that has been coming in is just tremendous, and it's just filled with gratitude that he had an impact on a lot of people other than our family. He had a huge impact, and the tributes, support are coming in. Beautiful stories, and I'm glad that people are reaching out and saying, I remember that your dad did this, and I remember your dad fed people. So I wasn't making all this stuff up, man. I wasn't. It was true. It has been true, and it's beautiful. So I'm going to take a little bit of time off and grieve. And I want to thank everyone on the other end of this microphone who hears, who has been giving us their time to listen, to help me pay a tribute to my father and my mother and my family. If you are feeling as lost in some way, I'm deeply grateful for that. And people have been asking, what can they do? How can they help? And it's hard to ask people, well, you could do this and you could do that. You don't think of those things. But I started to see clearly that maybe there is something that people could do. And just help spread his word that he was a taquero, and a lot of people in Northern California who enjoy the tacos, the carne asada, the al pastor, and everything that comes with it is, my father had a hand in that. Him and my mother, they helped shape that. They helped contribute to why they're so popular today. And he wasn't the first, and he wasn't the only one at that time, but he was doing it. He was in the arena. He was in the taco truck doing it. So if there is something you wish you can do, it's hard to ask. I do have, people have asked me, can we contribute something? And I a long time ago, I set up a contribution page, and people started to give some money, and it all would go to my mom. And so there is, if you want to, that's cool. I know there are tough times. A lot of people have lost their jobs and are hurting. So I understand, and I wouldn't ask to impede in your struggles. But if you'd like to contribute to the funeral costs, and there's a page. We have our website. You go there, and if not, the only thing I could ask other than that is be an advocate for people like my dad, the taqueros, and help spread the word that these people did more than just sell tacos and burritos. They changed people's lives. They helped feed people. And I want that story to be told by the people like us, like my family, not by somebody who just went to TJ 2 days ago and said, "Oh, these are great. I invented tacos, and let me just show you how these tacos are. And I'm an expert." No, they're not. Those people are writing stories to make money. And those people are lying. The people who really shaped the world of tacos are people like my father. And I need people to spread that, to tell others about that. So I've taken enough of your time, and I want to be very clear that I am extremely thankful that people are paying attention, or at least downloading these episodes and finding out more about my family. I'll be back in due time, and I'm going to keep this podcast going. Not just for my dad and for my mother, but for people that have never had a voice, and what they do and how they contribute to modern day society. And I'll be back. I promise. I will be back. As long as I could try, I will be back. And until then, on behalf of my father, Juan Salas, this is 10,000 Tacos.